So judging by the title alone, I know some of you are like, Miss Twilight, what the hell, cat? What the hell, cat, are you talking about? Hold up, wait a minute. Let me put some intellectual thought in it. Bear with me, guys. If you get to the end of the video, it will all make sense. So sit tight, listen up, keep an open mind, and let me know what you think in the comments when you get to the end of the video. All right.
You tryna see what's up? He wanna fuck with me, then I'ma have him stuck. Bitch looking bad and got a stupid butt. Jewelry on.
Hey y'all, hey, welcome. Glad you're sticking around. Make sure you watch to the end to get the full tea that I'm about to spill. Now, I know my imagery was a bit confusing. It had all types of women meshed up into one, and you guys are probably like, what in the hell does this have to do with Sexxy Red liberating Black femininity? Like, what are we talking about here? Well, there is this old adage, maybe even more than an adage, a Bible scripture that speaks to the fact that what's done in the dark will eventually come to the light. Now, I'm not a big Bible person, but I am a big truth person, and that is the truth. What has been done in the dark to femininity is finally coming to the light. And I want you guys to remember when I did my series on Mammyville 1 and 2, you want to make sure you check the description box because it's linked there so you can watch it for yourself. But I talked about the way that Black women's femininity was marginalized in antiquity. And I want you to know this isn't a guys lay off of Sexxy Red because we're all sisters kind of a message. That's not the angle that I'm hinting at. Plus, that's kind of corny and that's really not on brand for me. Now, what I want to talk about is how deep the marginalization of Black femininity goes. And I mentioned that in my two prior videos, Mammy 1 and Mammy 2. Make sure you go ahead and check that out. Link is in the description. Nonetheless, in the Mammy video, I pointed out how the slave women were totally unprotected by men and by law. And ultimately, the women were either sexually restrained by being the loyal servant Mammy, or the other role that they got to play was Jezebell, symbolizing the supposed promiscuous behavior of the Black female. And it became a justification for sexual abuse that female slaves suffered at the hands of both Black and white men. This is Sourjorner. This is also Sourjorner. Being accosted and being forced to have physical contact with lame ass YK Osiris against her will in front of everybody. It's basically given, is you fucking or nah? And why do you think that he felt comfortable doing that to her? He wouldn't have walked up to Michelle Obama that way. He wouldn't have walked up to Kamala Harris that way. He felt comfortable doing that to her because she is considered to be a 304. By the way, for those of you who don't know what 304 actually references and where it comes from, in the 90s when we used to have those prehistoric pagers, we could text each other 304, and when you turned it upside down, it spelled, yeah, you see it. So that's where it comes from. So once again, by symbolizing the supposed promiscuous behavior of the black female, it became a justification for sexual abuse that female slaves suffered at the hands of both white and black males.
YK Osiris, we watched him on video grabbing Sukihana, who is a musical star, is a reality television star, and he forcibly kissed her. There's no other way to say it. He got a ton of backlash. There were even people who said he should be charged with the crime. Well, yesterday on the show, we talked about YK Osiris's apology, and I think for the most part, we all felt that it was a pretty sincere, pretty genuine apology. Yeah, well, I agree. What does Sukihana think? And that's the one who really matters. Does she think it's heartfelt, and does she accept it? Well, I think the answer to that is yes. So Sukihana saw the apology, and here's what she had to say. First, I want to acknowledge that YK Osiris has apologized to me privately and publicly, and I have chosen to accept his apology. God always forgives me, and I can always forgive others.
And blah, blah, blah. She went on with some other stuff like that. And so, yeah. So to combat these unfortunate circumstances that went along with trivializing Black female femininity, we decided as a group collectively to trivialize it more and to hold true to the narrative of respectability politics. What is respectability politics? Well, it's a political strategy wherein members of a marginalized community will consciously abandon or punish controversial aspects of their cultural political identity as a method of assimilation to achieve social mobility and gaining the respect of the majority culture. So the absolute best example of embodying respectability politics and being able to navigate life seamlessly would be the fictional character of Claire Huxtable. Many young women in the 80s and 90s strived to be exactly like her, even though she was a TV character. Now, the Claire Huxtable types were actually born out of feminism, and at one point were less accepted than the common 304. Now, when we hear about feminism, it's often an insult hurled from a barely educated individual rolling out of the ashy lips of some triggered rant from a person who is vomiting the term to characterize any woman that does not build her life around procuring the male gaze in an attempt to shame those women. Claire Huxtable would be considered a feminist. She was independent, she was intelligent, she was smart, she was capable, she lived in the upper echelon of society, and even though she had a husband who she was equally yoked with, it still was her moving through society, not in the roles that the patriarchy had assigned for the Black woman, which is either that of a Jezebell or a Mammy. So a really quick, brief overview of feminism. The term actually encompasses a range of theories and movements aimed at achieving gender equality and advocating for women's rights. Here are some key feminist ideologies. There's liberal, there's radical, there's Marxist, there's cultural, but for the purpose of this video, we're simply going to focus on Black feminism. Now, Black feminism focuses on the unique experience and challenges faced by Black women, emphasizing the importance of race in understanding gender oppression. Under the guise of Black feminism would be Sourjorner Truth, Ida B. Wells, Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, Angela Davis.
Where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women at the North all talking about rights, the white man will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman?
Man, listen, that woman ain't write that fucking shit. Sourjorner Truth, an educated, eloquent, well-spoken Black woman, wrote something totally different. At the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio on May 29, 1851, the one that Sourjorner Truth actually wrote reads as, "May I say a few words? I want to say a few words about this matter. I am woman's rights. I have as much muscle as any man and can do as much work as any man. I have plowed and reaped and husked and chopped and mowed, and can any man do more than that? I have heard about the sexes being equal. I can carry as much as any man and can eat as much too, if I can get it. I am as strong as any man that is now. As for intellectual, all I can say is, if a woman has a pint and a man has a quart, why can't she have her full pint? You need not be afraid to give us our rights for fear we may take too much, for we can't take more than what our pint will hold." And she said much more than that. However, that was not good enough, and that didn't gain enough traction. The white dominant race was not buying it. So 12 years later, a notable white woman activist in 1863 rewrote it with all of the ebonics and AAVE that one's heart could desire. If you would like to view more of this original speech, the link will be in the description. Now, let's talk about how it has worked out for women of the modern day who have rose to prominence and seemingly inclusion with the dominant society through their respectability posture. Kamala Harris, 49th VP, as well as a lawyer and politician. Kamala Harris can't seem to do anything right as far as the Democrats are concerned, even though she rose to prominence and she does nothing to rock the boat. The Democrats do not have a favorable approval of her. In fact, they feel as if though she is not the best speaker and she doesn't stand for anything, even though she gave strong rhetorical performances about an urgent need for police reform, a fiery speech about the 50th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, but they do not see her as making any kind of prominent impact. White House officials have noted that she's led publicly and privately on reproductive rights and voting rights, pointing out 40 public events that she's been to, as well as bolstering $1.5 billion for Ukraine. And even after all of that, she still gets mocked every chance the internet gets. Michelle Obama. This lady needs no introduction. You already know who she is, and she hails from the south side of Chicago, just like your girl. Many would call her and her husband's legacy legendary. But what has the public said about Michelle Obama?
In 2019, a satirical website published a story claiming that Michelle's mother had died and left everything in her will to her son, Michael Robinson Obama. The news piece was widely circulated as truth and was somehow still gaining traction in 2022. For starters, Michelle Obama's mother, Marion Shields Robinson, is still alive, but that didn't stop the rumor from spreading. The theory again caught steam in 2023. Republican Omar Navarro took to X to write, "Retweet if you think Michelle Obama is really a man."
So, yep, they called the former First Lady a man. Ebony K. Williams. She's a successful lawyer. She's worth millions. She's also a TV personality. And regardless of all those accolades, this is what society really wants for Ebony K. Williams.
They are not positioned to protect nor provide because of some of the statistics we just talked about. They're not earning the incomes. They're not having the resources, and some of them are not even showing up in the leadership.
Would you date a bus driver? Would you date
if he owns the bus? If he owns it. If he owns the bus.
See, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. Okay. Because the standards and requisites, and I'm not talking about him laying on his sofa playing video games all day. I'm not talking about that. But the standards and the criteria that we use to measure men is off for who we are as women and who they are in this society. I would date a bus driver if he loved driving the bus, if he was a man of integrity, if he was good to his mama, if he treated me well.
Child, no. Ain't nobody trying to be no Barbara the Builder. This lady deserves her own version of Barack Obama. And the fact that she's expecting and the way that the manosphere men are sliding down the wall about her not choosing to be married while she's having this baby is so funny to me, because they run right into the point and miss it every time. Nonetheless, I think that there was only one politician who had this respectability politics right. Rhode Island's Senator Tiara Mack.
Vote Senator Mack.
Sorry guys, but it looks like Miss Mack is all out of fucks to give. Because you see, she's learned the one thing that many of our predecessors have not learned. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
I've been a nasty girl, nasty. I've been a nasty girl, nasty. I've been.
You will. Like that for me, would you? Was.
You're perfect.
You don't think I'm spent?
You're the sexiest goddamn thing I've ever gotten to touch for free.
In Abrahamic religions, we have come to know a very sanitized version of women. One in which she is a happy servant. She is submissive. She folds herself into her man. And she is very pleased with only living a life that pleases him. This has been the version of women that we have been able to see and embrace in Western society, mainly because of the patriarchy and mainly because of white male hegemony. But as we've become more aware of indigenous cultures and practices, we've learned that there are various different sides to the feminine prowess, and it is not relegated to soft femininity only. They call this dark femininity when in fact it is just another aspect of the feminine that has been suppressed for so long.
We all have heard of Adam and Eve, who according to the Bible were the first couple of human beings created by God. But an ancient Jewish myth contests that Eve was the first woman. This myth states that before Eve, there was another woman, Lilith. Unlike Eve, who came from Adam's rib, Lilith emerged from clay along with Adam. Since she was created by God in the same way as Adam, Lilith did not submit to her husband's commands because she thought she was equal to him and did not accept Adam's domination. Lilith and Adam inhabited the Garden of Eden, but Lilith's rebellion put her in a situation where she was forced to choose between submitting to her husband or leaving the Garden of Eden. Lilith was not willing to give up her independence, therefore she opted to leave Adam and the Garden of Eden behind. The first woman ever created went into exile and settled herself near the Red Sea. God sent angels in an attempt to convince Lilith to return to the Garden of Eden, but she turned her back on God. Without his wife, Adam started to feel lonely. God, seeing that he was struggling with loneliness, decided to create a new woman for him, Eve. Due to her decision to reject the Creator, Lilith was demonized.
What I found interesting in that clip about Lilith is how she was demonized because she did not want to return to a toxic situation. However, Adam, who was feeling lonely, had so much compassion heaved on him that God decided to make him a whole nother woman that wouldn't ever leave him lonely. Isn't that beautiful? But all sarcasm aside, if you look at it from the perspective of the Abrahamic religions, they wanted Eve to be a non-threatening version of femininity, whereas Lilith represented the whole of femininity. There are other examples, like in the Ifa pantheon, where they talk about the Orishas. So with the Orishas, you would find that they controlled the elements of nature, such as the earth and water and air, as well as there were elements that they controlled like life and death. And they were very well-rounded, while they were also warriors. And sometimes it had to make difficult leadership-based decisions. They were also very nurturing, loving, and kind, which gives credence to the fact that, yes, soft femininity is an aspect of women. However, the other aspect, the part that the men could not control, was the part that the Abrahamic religions sought to suppress in the women, because they cannot control a being that is literally levitating or moving objects with their mind. Fun fact, Beyonce represented one of the Orishas, Oshun, in her representation of the Lemonade album in her song Hold Up. Also, fun fact, the character Storm from X-Men, Stan Lee based that character off of the Orisha Oya. So if you know anything about Storm and her caricature from X-Men, you know that she wasn't nobody's punk, but she was a lover and a fighter. So that should give you some indication of the totality of the feminine. So by now you have some idea of where I'm going with this, but how Sexxy Red liberated Black femininity is because this is the forgotten, discarded, shamed, belittled, and grotesque part of the feminine experience as a Black woman, especially in Western society, but I'm sure in other societies as well. Distinctly relating to antiquity. Remember earlier I showed you how they relegated the Black woman's femininity to two archetypes, Mammy and Jezebel. Their excuse for all of their heinous acts towards Jezebel was because of her promiscuity.
So, I mean, I don't think nobody come out their mother womb a hoe or a prostitute. Most of the things that we experience in life are environmental, and it's connected to environmental pressure, and then you got to look at trauma too, and post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of women that usually enter into certain lifestyles, promiscuous or prostitution and so on and so forth, they are generally women who probably, more than likely, probably been raped by a father or uncle or cousin or molester.
You heard what Pimpin' Ken said. He said that a lot of this type of behavior is rooted in trauma. And I would have to say that it is very much so heavily correlated. These women don't just wake up and want to start shaking their butt and sleeping around. Something has to happen to be the catalyst to this. And oftentimes I find it funny that it is a known fact that a lot of this has to do with some level of trauma or some level of sexual assault or abuse, but everybody turns and looks at the result of what the woman or the girl has become. In my opinion, I find it cruel and distasteful. And it's almost as if they are mocking these women for their trauma.
What's the craziest thing she's been through? She tells them she got raped one time, and they just skip right past it.
Can you tell us like the craziest thing that's ever happened to me?
Crazy shit. That's gonna stay between us.
I got raped before. That's the craziest thing that ever happened to me.
Now, obviously, they're adults and they can go to therapy. But again, the point that I'm making is the men that are so up in arms about 304 rap, give me a break. Because for over 40 plus years, we've listened to stuff like slop on my knob, like corn on the car, check in with me and do your job. We've also listened to crap like B better have my money, ain't nothing like Black P on my D. Come on, man. Seriously, that had to have had an adverse effect and impact on the psyche of young girls and boys, obviously, especially since we already know that there is a pipeline to hip-hop prison system that goes on like nearly every day. So to put all this energy and animosity into 304 rap, I find it disingenuous and fake. And I'm not going to stand for it. I think Sexxy Red is just herself. And while I may not always agree with her lyrical content, I can certainly say that I'm familiar with girls like her from where I'm from on the south side of Chicago. And I know that she's from St. Louis. So like literally, I can totally see the girls in the neighborhood in her, and I know what those girls went through, and I know the way that they were exploited by men. Now, I'm not saying that she's some sort of victim now or anything like that, but she was victimized, and that had an adverse impact on her, and that changed her forever. It changed the trajectory of her life forever. So I think that Sexxy Red just represents a part of Black femininity that we want to throw away, that we don't want to see, that we don't want to look at, that we want to cover up, that we don't want to know that it exists. And I think by her being so loud and prominent, it's just bringing to the conversation up to the forefront of what's going on here. What is the deal with this weird culture that we have around, exploitation and, PDF filing and things of that ilk? We need to start looking more into that, because the results of those transgressions are here. And karma is saying, pay up, motherfucker.